Hi and Assalamualaikum. My name is Farah Hanani binti Suhaimi.
Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Norfatini binti Halid.
Hi, I am Saadah binti Musa.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Puteri Miss Ernie binti Ahmah Kamil. We are from Group 2. Topics number 2 is about euthanasia. Okay, firstly, what is euthanasia is about? So in my slide, euthanasia comes from the Greek words. Eu means good and thanes means death. So good death. Euthanasia is killing someone for the sake of mercy to relieve great suffering. Also, euthanasia can be referred to the situation when physician induces patient to the death who is suffering and requests the doctor to do so. We can also say like the practice of killing without feel the pain of a person who is suffering from painful disease and great suffering. So euthanasia involve a person actually, a physician, for example, giving injections of drug to induce the coma or to stop the heart. So euthanasia ni dia involve someone lah, and especially a doctor, a physicians. Different countries has different euthanasia laws. And a doctor is allowed by law to end a person's life as long as patient and their family consent. Bila buat euthanasia ni, as long as family member dia ataupun patient tu sendiri agree, berikan keizinan untuk buat euthanasia, then it will be okay. But it depends on country, on the law of the country itself, legal or not illegal. Also, this euthanasia have assisted suicide, means a doctor assists a patient to commit suicide if they request it. So, ni adalah gambaran euthanasia di mana patient request untuk doktor bagi ubat ataupun injection bagi dia mati ataupun doktor tu sendiri letting him die. Lepas ni kita akan tengok the types of euthanasia based on two types. The first one is the active euthanasia and the second one is voluntary and involuntary euthanasia. From my slide, we'll go one by one, okay? So for active euthanasia, taking a direct action designed to kill the patient such as give the lethal injection of morphine. The doctor does something to bring about the patient death. Okay, ni bermakna active euthanasia adalah doktor tu sendiri bagi lethal injection. Maksudnya injection yang untuk mematikan si pesakit itu. Dekat sini situasi dia doktor does something. Doktor tu akan buat something kepada patient tu bagi patient tu death. So, kat sini kita boleh tengok doctor kills patient. He kills him. So, in contrast, passive euthanasia allowing the patient to die by withholding the treatment. And the doctor does not do anything to bring about the patient death. Meaning here, doctor withholding, delay dulu. Bukan delay, maksudnya doktor tu tak bagi apa-apa treatment to that patient, sama ada ubat ke injection ke, dia tak bagi apa-apa. The doctor just letting the patient die and does not do anything to selamatkan life patient tersebut. So this is the passive euthanasia. So what is the distinctions between these two, the active and the passive euthanasia? So what I read in the book about the contemporary moral issue of euthanasia and the duty to die, it say that the active euthanasia is actually preferable than the passive euthanasia because passive euthanasia is withholding the treatment. If one simply withholds the treatment, it may take the patient longer to die, and so he may suffer more than he would if more direct action were taken and lethal injection given. Maksudnya kat sini, it's prefer active euthanasia more than passive euthanasia because passive euthanasia ni dia buatkan pesakit itu longer to die. Dia akan memakan masa yang lama untuk mati. So, the pesakit tu akan suffer in a long time rather than direct actions like active euthanasia. You give the lethal injection, then the pesakit akan mati terus. So, part of my point is that the process of being allowed to die can be relatively slow and painful, whereas being given a lethal injection is relatively quick and painless. Active euthanasia adalah sangat cepat dan tak sakit, whereas the passive euthanasia, kita akan letting the pesakit, the patient, die and membuatkan pesakit itu lagi lama suffer with their pain. Saya akan beri contoh pasal passive euthanasia. Kita ambil defective infant, okay? Bayi yang kurang sehat. Doktor not performing life-saving surgery on defective infant, okay? Bayi yang kurang, doktor tak ambil peduli and is not performing life-saving surgery on that infant. Next, about the voluntary and involuntary euthanasia. Okay, the voluntary euthanasia means mercy killing with the consent of terminally ill or suffering person. Non-voluntary euthanasia, mercy killing without the consent of the person killed, although the consent of others such as parents or relatives can be obtained. Voluntary and involuntary ini berbezanya atas consent seseorang, consent pesakit itu sendiri. Maknanya keizinan pesakit itu untuk menerima injection ataupun tak nak menerima injection tersebut. Voluntary, untuk senang faham, ia adalah practice with a desire and consent of the person. Kalau orang tu nak and dia allow the physicians to take part of the treatments, to take part of lethal injections, then it's called as voluntary. Patient itu sendiri volunteer diri dia sendiri untuk menerima rawatan lethal injection itu. And involuntary pula, it is like the killing of those who are unable to give consent. For instance, the defective infant tadi yang saya bagi contoh tadi, bayi yang kurang sehat, bayi yang sakit, dia unable to give the consent, so it is called as involuntary.
Next is countries that allow euthanasia. Okay, so there is some of the country that allow. The first one is Switzerland. This country is the first country that allow physician-assisted suicide without minimum age requirement, diagnosis or symptoms state. It can be seen about 1.5% of Swiss deaths are the result of assisted suicide. Then the second country is Belgium, where allow euthanasia and assisted suicide for those with unbearable suffering and no prospect of improvement. It is also no age requirement, but must have terminal illness to perform euthanasia. Because if a patient is not terminally ill, there is a 1 month waiting period before perform the euthanasia. Okay, so the third one is Canada. This country also allow euthanasia and assisted suicide for adults suffering from grievous and irremediable conditions yang mana kematian tu boleh dijangka ataupun akan berlaku. Lastly is USA, where several states allowing doctor-assisted suicide for terminal ill patients in Washington, California, and so on. Next.
Okay, the illegal country for euthanasia are Sebelum tu nak describe sikit lah. Dia bukan illegal country sangat lah, dia bukan mengharamkan terus macam tu, cuma dia belum di dalam praktik yet lah. Dia tak apply lagi euthanasia ni dekat negara-negara ni lah. Contohnya negara kita sendirilah, negara Malaysia. Kenapa Malaysia tak praktik lagi euthanasia ni? Sebab government not ready to legalize it, because our country ada macam-macam bangsa, ada agama Islam, agama Kristian, agama Buddha. Jadi semua orang society tu dia orang berpegang teguh kepada agama, dan kita sendiri pun mempercayai bahawa hanya Tuhan je yang berhak ambil nyawa kita, bukannya dari segi medical atau apa semua. Medical yang tiba-tiba sakit jantung ke, tiba-tiba accident tu, yang tu menjadi asbab je. Tapi yang penting kita mempercayai ajal maut kita di tangan Tuhan. Bukannya bila kita sengsara tu terus kita boleh bagi tahu doktor untuk suntik kita, macam tu. Jadi negara yang kedua adalah negara Indonesia lah. Kenapa negara Indonesia tidak mempraktikkan euthanasia ni? Sebabnya diorang pun not quite rational yet, and for them taking off ventilator may violate the law and same as murder. Bila orang tu bergantung selama contoh 2 dekad kepada mesin, dan tiba-tiba kita cabut mesin tu, itu dikira sebagai membunuh lah. Kalau korang pernah tengok cerita sinetron ke apa, bila kita membuang mesin tu kan, orang tu terus tak ada kan. Jadi itu dikira sebagai murder lah, sebagai keganasan. Dan kebanyakan negara Asia memang tidak menyokong euthanasia ni sebab ia dilihat sebagai tabu. Tabu ni macam bila sebut tu terus negatif. Contohnya berzina. Bila sebut tu terus negatif lah benda ni kan. Jadi euthanasia pun macam tu juga. Bila sebut tu terus orang fikir benda yang negatif lah, tak ada yang positif dari sudut mana-mana lah. Kalau orang tahu makna euthanasia lah kan. Jadi negara yang seterusnya adalah Egypt lah. Negara Timur Tengah ni. Kebanyakan negara Timur Tengah pun diorang tidak praktikkan euthanasia sebab negara-negara ni kebanyakannya negara OIC kan, organisasi Islamik tu, Islamic country. So mereka pun berpegang teguh kepada ajaran Islam ni semua. Dalam artikel 157 of Puteri Penal Code states that a person is guilty of murder even if the victim suffer from a disease or an injury that would lead to death and the perpetrator shorten his life. Walaupun diorang dah lama bergantung kepada mesin, tapi tak boleh nak buat apa-apa lah. Memang kena bergantung je lah kepada mesin tu. Sebab kalau buang tu macam saya kata dekat Indonesia tadi, macam dikira sebagai jenayah. Dia sama juga macam Syria, Lebanon. And topik ni memang dekat negara-negara ni memang kontroversi lah, sebab ramai juga yang tidak menyokong kepada treatment ni. Sebab bagi sesetengah society, dia orang mempercayai masih ada lagi lah cara lain selain daripada euthanasia ni kan. Jadi kenapa negara-negara western seperti Belgium, Switzerland menyokong euthanasia ni? Sebabnya memberi, salah satu puncanya adalah autonomy to the patient. Kita memberi autonomi lah kepada pesakit. Kalau pesakit tu cakap dia lebih baik mati daripada hidup, so doktor tu tak boleh nak buat apa-apa je lah kan. Doktor tu ikut je lah yang pesakit tu buat. Cakap they didn't find any value and purpose anymore in their life. So ini macam dikira sebagai fed up lah. Bila bukan fed up sangat kan, dia macam kalau kita sakit dekat sekian lama, jadi kita macam daripada membebankan keuangan, membebankan orang ramai, jadi negara-negara ni dia orang bagi je. Nak tak ada lah, macam gitulah, lebih kurang. Negara Britain and the United States, whoever is suffering from fatal and incurable incurable illness, which includes slow and painful death, should be allowed under law. Diorang boleh lah kalau minta dengan doktor, dengan secara medical diorang dicocok euthanasia ni, dibenarkan. Yang kedua adalah kenapa negara-negara ini menyokong euthanasia ni, kerana negara mereka ada right to die. Macam negara kita ada kebebasan bersuara, kebebasan tempat tinggal. Jadi tempat mereka ni ada kebebasan untuk meninggal, hak untuk meninggal. Okay, tak ada orang lah boleh deny this choice ni. Kalau kau nak, contohnya kalau nak meninggal, boleh kita bagi. Contoh macam tu lah lebih kurang. So it is also related to emotion pain lah kan. Bila orang tu dah sakit kan, orang tak faham dia punya sakit kan. So dia bagi tahulah doktor tu. Yang ketiga adalah kenapa orang nak euthanasia ni, sebab dia orang boleh dying with dignity. For some people, when they suffer from illness and chronic disease, there is no dignity and degree of satisfaction towards themselves. Sebabnya bila dia orang ni dah sakit, dah ada macam-macam penyakit, dia tengok orang lain sama umur dengan dia boleh pergi sana sini, boleh kumpul duit, tapi dia terlantar je dekat hospital. So dia rasa benda tu macam maruah dia tercalar lah. Kalau dia ada family pun, orang macam akan judge, kau ni ada family tapi tak boleh nak buat apa-apa kan. Okay, keburukan euthanasia adalah dari segi quality of life lah. Sebab tak semua orang yang pesakit ni yang nak melalui euthanasia ni, dia orang melalui better process. Sebab ada sesetengah parti, ada sesetengah pihak, dia orang take advantage untuk pesakit yang nak euthanasia ni. Okay, kita contohlah, for example, keluarga terdekat. Contoh lelaki yang euthanasia ni, dia menghidap penyakit kronik selama dah lama lah kan. Jadi dia ada banyak harta. Tak mustahil lah keluarga ke ataupun saudara mara terdekat inginkan harta tersebut. Jadi euthanasia ni kan dia boleh minta dari keluarga ataupun orang tu sendiri. Jadi side effect dia pula adalah kalau euthanasia ni tak berjaya, pesakit tu akan merana pula dengan pain and suffering. Okay. It also includes principally a physical, psychological dimension. It has a painful or uncomfortable consequence and it is unlikely to succeed. Okay, bila tak berjaya pula, ada pula kesan lain kan, nak dekat badan orang yang sakit tu. So benda ni macam menambahkan lagi lah kesakitan orang tu, sedangkan dia nak menghapuskan kesakitan dalam hidup dia. Jadi it is categorized as suicide. Okay, euthanasia ni macam saya kata tadi, dia berlindung sebalik suicide. Sebab it is assisted suicide, macam orang yang tolong kita suicide. Kalau suicide yang biasa dia seorang je, yang kalau yang euthanasia ni orang yang tolong dia untuk suicide. Unconsciously categorized as give up with life. Memang give up lah kan, sebab euthanasia ni bukannya dari God lah, macam bukan dari Tuhan lah yang nak bagi orang tu meninggal. Orang tu yang tentukan sendiri. Jadi ada setengah masyarakat menganggap itu sebagai putus asa lah dalam kehidupan. Okay. And lastly, not all information given by doctor is true. Okay. 1/5 can survive a terminal diagnosis based on length. Some doctors just give an optimistic time for a patient, even it is a longer time than they think. Sebenarnya ada sesetengah sakit ni dia orang boleh je bertahan lama, cuma sesetengah doktor dia orang kata sakit awak ni boleh bertahan 2 tahun je. Orang pesakit tu pun macam dah fed up lah dengan life kan, padahal dia ada perancangan banyak lagi. Dia boleh survive je sebenarnya, tapi sebab kata-kata lah. Sebab itulah euthanasia ni tak dipraktikkan di negara-negara Islam dan juga sesetengah negara di dunia ni.
So on. Next is Islamic perspective. whereby this is actually a fake ruling on this issue. From the Islamic perspective, of course, Islam against euthanasia, and it is absolutely prohibited for our religion, which is Islam. And Allah already said in Surah Al-Baqarah, chapter 2, verse 156, where to Allah we belong and to Him is our return. So it is crucial to us to remember that semua orang akan merasai mati dan everything in this world is temporary, right? Dan akan dibinasakan suatu hari nanti except Allah. Then in chapter 4 verse 29, Allah also said that do not kill yourselves, for verily Allah has been to you most merciful. And this verse explicitly prohibited suicide, euthanasia, and other type of homicide. So in regard of euthanasia, this verse also prohibit killing by clinicians. Okay, therefore Islam has always emphasized on natural death in the patient's best interest and is the most dignified death for a Muslim believer, which is kematian yang according to Allah plan, not according to doctors, judge, or family planning. Then, mercy killing is a quiet evidence that God has not permitted us to take anybody's life. In fact, Allah has guided us on treatment, and we should exercise patience. And Allah also states that He tests the believers with calamities, which is Al-Quran chapter 2 verse 153. So as a Muslim, kita kena anggap sakit yang kita lalui ini as a test from Allah, and to be more patient, to train us to be more patient, right? Then the similar themes are well supported by Sunnah. Prophet Muhammad SAW said, whoever kills himself with an iron instrument will be carrying it forever in hell. Whoever takes poison and kills himself will forever keep sipping that poison in hell. Whoever jumps off a mountain and kills himself will forever keep falling down in the depths of hell. Sahih Bukhari. So it is open our eyes that Islam strongly condemns ending human lives on the grounds of mercy and human sympathy, and that active euthanasia is forbidden, for it encompasses a positive role on the part of the physician to end the life of the patient and hasten his death, because it is an act of killing, and as you know, killing is a measure of sin and absolutely forbidden in Islam. And then for the medical perspective, where declining the medical treatment, it might be useless. So this is permissible, and sometimes it is even recommended. So we should believe and pray to Allah in our difficult situation instead of thinking to allow euthanasia.
I will be mentioning 4 religions. First is Christianity. Second one is Catholic Church. The third one is Judaism, and the fourth one is Buddhism. Okay, so first is Christianity, and so as we know in Islam, before we had illegalized the action of euthanasia. Same also in Christianity. Most of the people in Christianity against euthanasia, against the act of euthanasia. They said because life is given by God and human beings are valuable because they are made in God's image. Okay, this is like for them, by proposing euthanasia means that the current life of the individuals is not worthwhile. So meaning that someone, the humankind are made by God image. So when we say that when they are performing the euthanasia, meaning that the person's life is not very good, and that shows that their God also not good. And such judgment are incompatible with recognizing the worth and dignity of the person to be killed. Okay. The next one is on Judaism. Judaism is from the Jewish tradition. You got the preservation of human's life as one of the supreme moral values and prohibit doing anything that might shorten life. Okay, so Jewish strongly condemn that any act that shorten life and threats of killing of a person whom the doctors say will die in any event to be an act of murder. Okay, so in Jewish law, they prohibit active euthanasia as it is considered as murder. So that's it. There's no exception on this rule, and it makes no difference if the person concerned want to die. So under the context of passive euthanasia, Jewish law said that if something that cause an impediment to the natural process of death and the patient only survive because of it, it is permitted under Jewish law to withdraw that thing, meaning that someone is brain dead already, a patient is certain to die and is only being kept alive by a ventilator, it is permissible to switch off the ventilator since it is impeding the natural process of death. So that's the Catholic Church, Roman Catholic. Okay, so basically their idea of euthanasia, they consider as it is morally wrong. Also, they said that human as a free agent, they have their own freedom, but not to the extent of ending their own life. This is because euthanasia and suicide are both rejection of God's absolute sovereignty over life and death. On the other side, they said that if someone refuses to get extraordinary or aggressive medicals, it means that it's not considered as euthanasia. It is under the context of preserving life. Okay, refusing such treatment is not euthanasia, but a proper acceptance of the human's condition in the face of death. In euthanasia, we have passive and active, right? So basically, passive type of euthanasia is withdrawing treatment or withhold the treatment. Okay, so basically, for the passive type of euthanasia, might be permissible since they said that it is acceptable, morally acceptable, refusing extraordinary and aggressive medicals in order to preserve their life. Okay, so basically their general idea is it is morally wrong to help someone to commit suicide since it is morally wrong to commit suicide for active euthanasia. The last one is Buddhism. Okay, so basically Buddhism is against involuntary euthanasia, while the position of voluntary euthanasia is seems to be unclear. This is because voluntary euthanasia is wrong as it shows that one's mind is in a bad state and once before had allowed physical suffering that had caused mental suffering. Okay, so basically the idea of shortening life interfere with the karma system, with their own karma system, and alter the karmic balance resulting from shortened life. So basically Buddhism has this system of karma, and they do not know what they will reincarnate in the
Euthanasia. Okay, the concept of maqasid syariah is refer to the purpose, objective or aims of syariah. Maksudnya kat sini, ia merupakan satu tujuan ataupun makna yang dikehendaki syarak dalam menyelesaikan kemaslahatan umat manusia. So it's also to secure benefit for the people or protect them against corruption or evil. Okay, so for instance, to realize the best interests of humans on earth, which subsequently leads to the happiness in the hereafter. So maqasid syariah ini terbahagi kepada 5 basic necessity, iaitu dalam slide, iaitu protections of the religions, protections of life, protections of lineage, protections of intellect, protections of property, iaitu agama, keturunan ataupun maruah, intelek, akal dan harta dan juga life, hidup. Next, the category of maqasid syariah. Kategori maqasid syariah ini ada 3 kategori. Tadi 5 basic necessity itu adalah memang basic items of maqasid syariah. Kategori ini adalah 5 basic tadi juga, tapi termasuk dalam 3 kategori ini. Dan 5 basic tadi terdiri daripada kategori daruriyat. Sebenarnya this category of maqasid syariah adalah satu hierarchy Kalau nampak dalam slide, I put the essentials atas sekali. Middle one is the embellishments and the third one is the complementary. Okay. The first one daruriyat, second one tahsiniyat and hajiyat. We will go one by one. Ad-daruriyat, the essential. 5 basic necessity on which the lives of people depend. The matters on which the religion and worldly affairs of the people depends upon. Maksudnya kat sini ialah perkara-perkara yang bergantung kepada agama dan urusan duniawi. Okay, itu adalah views tentang daruriyat. Second one is hajiyat, matters that people needs in order to remove restrictions and difficulty in applying the 5 necessity. To facilitate practicing and applying necessity. Hajiyat ini adalah satu, dia keperluan juga tapi less essential. Needs are less essential for human life compared to daruriyat itself. The requirements for humans being to live without facing difficulty. Okay, contohnya macam marriage, okay, communication tools, healthy food, transportations. Benda-benda tu ada keperluan, tetapi keperluan less than daruriyat. Daruriyat itu adalah satu keperluan yang sangat besar, tetapi hajiyat is needs of less essential. But Islam encourage and regulate these needs. Third one is tahsiniyat. It is something that desirable, kehendak kita sendiri. Interest whose realization leads to improvement and the attainment of that which is desirable. Neglect of tahsiniyat may not interrupt the normal life, but it may lead to discomfort. Contohnya luxuries are complementary and desirable factor that give perfections and additional value to human life. Kan? Maksudnya kemewahan ini adalah satu kehendak kita. Kita nak pakai new brand, kita nak pakai brand mahal-mahal, kita nak pakai luxury car, ataupun nak duduk di rumah banglo yang besar. So this is tahsiniyat. Islam encourage sebenarnya to have a better life in correct manners. So this is a view about the maqasid syariah so that you will understand about the relation between the maqasid syariah and the euthanasia.
What are the rules that we need to follow when we are applying maqasid syariah? So the first one is the strongest interest shall prevail, whereby there are 3 categories of maqasid under maqasid syariah, right? So the first one is daruriyat, tahsiniyat and hajiyat. So, among these 3, daruriyat will have more priority over tahsiniyat and hajiyat. For example, the flow will be first is religion, second is life, third one is lineage, the fourth one is intellect, and the last one is property. Okay, so meaning that religion and life, protection of religion and life are the most important thing. Okay, so the second rules is the public interest is given priority to the private, and the third one is the definitive interest prevails over the proper. Okay, in the case of euthanasia, so I guess that the strongest interest shall prevail are the correct term to use when we are deciding the rules of euthanasia, the rulings in deciding hukum for euthanasia. Okay, so what are the maqasid syariah in relation of the impermissible action of euthanasia? Okay, let me start with the protection of religion first. Okay, as we know that protection of religion is something that we help to preserve our religion, which is Islam, right? So in Islam and matters related to human's life, it is not the responsibility of human. So euthanasia had involved if someone had performed the act of euthanasia, meaning that they had made an involvement of human attempt to giving and taking away life, and this action had violated the purpose of religion by assuming that Allah prerogative of causing death. Okay, so and also in Islam we know that Allah gives lives and also has the absolute authority of taking it, and it is not a human to take away that responsibility. or the authority. Moving on to the next part, which is protection of life. So as we know, life is the greatest gift from Allah Subhanahu wa Taala. The reason why we are breathing nowadays. Okay, so we know that we must always protect our life at all costs. And when talking about euthanasia, we know that euthanasia is the act of mercy killing, right? So basically, euthanasia had violated the purpose of preserving life in Islam. This is because when we are performing euthanasia, we are trying to kill someone, whereby in Islam, killing is very, very prohibited, be it any type of killing. So, not a single human, be it a professional doctor or any family members or anyone, can take one's life, as it is not our authority to do so. It is Allah Subhanahu wa Taala authority, absolute authority to do, as mentioned before. Okay, so euthanasia will have the same idea as killing, because both actions are the action of taking away one's life. So, therefore, the purpose of preserving life makes any form of active or passive euthanasia illegal. Okay, so the next one is protection of lineage or dignity. Protection of lineage is promoted in many ways, such as marriage, and one of it is maintenance of healthy family life. Okay, so meaning that we are maintaining our healthy life so that we can always stay healthy for the next generation. Okay, so therefore, euthanasia indirectly violated the purpose of preserving lineage by taking lightly the value of human's life. This is because since the act of euthanasia can be called as killing, so it also indirectly can be seen as we are encouraging suicide, homicide, and genocide. Okay, that's for protection of lineage. And the last one is protection of mind. Other than life, intellect is also another great gift from Allah Subhanahu wa Taala, because when there is intellect or mind, we being differentiate between humankind and animals. Okay, so basically, choosing death instead of getting treatment is one of the way that violate the protection of mind, because treatment of physical illness may remove stress that affect the mental state of someone. Okay, maybe it might not be closely related in euthanasia, but we know that when someone has physical illness, it always must affect the mental state of someone. So basically, when we choose to die, it like disturbing the process of preserve the mental state of someone. Okay.
For the moral judgment, according to James Rachel, he argued that the distinction between moral permissibility of active and passive euthanasia is ineffective because there is no tenable difference in those acts. He also argued in cases where euthanasia, active or passive, is preferred, that killing is in itself not worse than letting die. But rather people think that there is a difference between these two forms of euthanasia, which is passive and active euthanasia. From my point of view, I believe that euthanasia is immoral because the action that made to end someone or human life is not a good choice. It's like kejam, even though she or he has a terminally ill. However, it can be a good to apply active euthanasia in some of the condition where the patient has a prolonged suffering, where it can eliminate the horrible suffering she or he face. Back to James Rachel's statement, I disagreed with him, where as a human being, euthanasia is immoral doing because killing someone who are ill is worse than letting him die, right? So it shows that do not let someone die by taking an action of euthanasia to end of suffering, because it is considered as immoral as a mankind. It is because when we let someone die by allowing euthanasia, at some point actually macam kita mengambil kerja Allah tu. and we as a human being have no right to take another person or human life. And as you know that human being is a very respectable creature by God.
Okay, a study of doctors in Australia found that young doctors are more advanced in terms of accepting euthanasia than older doctors. Sebab bila orang-orang muda ni kadang dia tak sekata dengan doktor-doktor yang dah senior, jadi diorang menyokong je euthanasia ni, sedangkan ada sesetengah doktor diorang tidak menyokong doktor yang senior sebab diorang tahulah efek dia macam mana. Okay, this is moral judgment. Okay, my opinion is I think euthanasia can be implemented in some country based on their patients demand or individual permission, sebab kita tahulah kan euthanasia ni boleh daripada pesakit tersebut ataupun daripada permintaan keluarga. Jadi depend on kerajaan negara masing-masing lah. Kalau diorang rasa rakyat diorang ni perlukan euthanasia untuk kesejahteraan, diorang bolehlah implement. Dan saya berpendapat euthanasia ni amatlah bagus kalau kita buat dekat anjing-anjing liar ataupun kucing-kucing yang tak ada orang pelihara tu, yang dekat luar, daripada kita tengok diorang tu tak makan, gaduh, mati tengah jalan macam tu. Memang kita tengok pun kadang-kadang sadis lah kan dengan keadaan diorang. Jadi saya berpendapat bolehlah kita cucuk euthanasia dekat haiwan-haiwan ni. Dan atas faktor tertentu lah, kalau dekat haiwan such as disease and incurable conditions, kita pun tak sanggup kan nak tengok haiwan yang kita sayang ke ataupun haiwan dekat luar sana merana, tapi tak tahu nak buat apa sebab dia kan haiwan. Okay. On the other part, when it goes to mental illness such as depression, patient cannot simply take euthanasia as a decision. Okay, kalau melibatkan mental illness, saya bertegas untuk tidak menyokonglah euthanasia ni. Kalau orang tu ada mental illness, dia nak suicide dan mengambil jalan mudah untuk buat euthanasia, memang saya tak sokong lah. Sebab depression ni dia penyakit, tapi dia boleh disembuhkan berdasarkan treatment-treatment yang tertentu. Dan suicide adalah bukan cara yang jalan pintas, orang kata bukan jalan pintas untuk meredakan depression tu. Okay, untuk orang yang depression ni kan, daripada diorang ambil euthanasia, okay, it is okay to make collaboration between psychologist and doctor. Must be compulsory. Macam dekat hospital, kita buat kerajaan ke buat prosedur, doktor dan psikologis wajib ada untuk doktor untuk medical treatment, psikologis untuk motivation. Sebab bila kita sakit ni, kita perlukan dua. Kita perlukan medical, kita perlukan sokongan. Jadi sometimes people just need motivation when they sick to fight their chronic illness. Okay, ada psikologi mengatakan kalau kita pergi ke klinik, ada doktor ni dia mengatakan dekat kita, okay, dia bagi moral support. Contoh dia friendly, dia cakap awak kena makan ubat, nanti baik boleh jumpa family awak. Okay, so kita rasa kata-kata dia tu dia macam memberi sokongan terhadap kita. Kita macam, okay, aku nak jumpa family aku kena sihat. Okay. Berbanding dengan doktor yang sekadar cakap awak ni mesti malas ni nak makan ubat ni. Sebab tu tak sembuh-sembuh. Kita pun rasa macam malas aku makan ubat, makan pun tak sembuh juga. Sebab kata-kata daripada doktor sendiri yang membuat yang mempengaruhi minda kita lah. Biasalah minda kita ni kadang-kadang dipengaruhi oleh kata-kata manusia kan. Sebab tu untuk orang yang ada depression, ada mental illness ataupun chronic illness, bagi saya lah memang sentiasalah ada harapan untuk kita sembuh. Dan jangan ambil mudahlah untuk melakukan euthanasia sebab kadang-kadang kita rasa dah tak ada harapan, tapi sebenarnya ada cahaya yang Allah nak tunjuk sebelum menuju ke pintu kejayaan. Okay, sekian saja dari saya dan kawan-kawan semua dari grup 2. Euthanasia